Just want to thank you, Safe Rides and Becky, for inviting me to talk on this. Just to share with you and hear what many speakers have to say. I just grabbed a bunch of slides from work I did during the pandemic, and I'll try to get through as much of it as I can. So the two main things impacting my work this time was, of course, the pandemic and the
so sorry, Ben, to interrupt, but your audio is a bit muffly. Oh, that might be, that's much better.
I had a notebook on my laptop. Sorry about that.
No worries. Sorry, I just thought I'd let you know. Okay, no, thank you. Sorry about that.
Sure. So yeah, two major things that were affecting the work I was doing this time was, this isolation that we all felt during the pandemic. And in the United States, the rise in the Black Lives Matter movement and the focus on kind of the violence against Black bodies in the United States. And the other change was we were all kind of working from home. So, March, we were sent home from working in my office. I commute about an hour to downtown to Chicago to work. And since the pandemic, I've been working from my studio, which has been really nice. So I actually had a lot more studio time and time to make work and be around all my supplies and materials than I did previously. So this is my view from my laptop, sitting in my studio, kind of looking outside. The first thing that I did during the pandemic was kind of inspired by things that were happening outside the US. So here, we were looking at Italy, which was a few weeks ahead of as far as their response to the coronavirus. So we were looking at what was going on in Europe and knowing that it would hit the States a few weeks later. So we were seeing in Italy these signs going up with these rainbows saying everything will be all right. And people in our neighborhood started doing the same thing. There's my neighbor at the end of the block put a big sign that said, "Thank the helpers." So in my city I live in, which is Evanston, which is the suburb just north of Chicago, we were focusing on food, like restaurants were making meals for people, people were delivering food. And I thought, I've got a press, maybe I could contribute to this conversation. So I made these series of prints. The first thing I thought when the pandemic hit was, keep your distance. Safety was big and top of everyone's mind. The second thing was, we're gonna be trapped with our families a lot more than usual. So, enjoy your family. And so the other ones came out as an offshoot of that. The one that really resonated was share your skills. Everyone was wondering, like, what could I do? Like, how could I help the first responders? And for me, thinking, how can I use the press? How can I use the power of print to be helpful or say something during this challenging time? So these are all letterpress printed from wood type in my studio. And at the bottom, there's the phrase, "We are all connected." Also sitting at that desk, looking out the window, I saw lots of people walking by and people that I'd never seen before, because typically I'm not here during the day. So seeing all these people who were new to me, but knowing that, hey, these are my neighbors. These were people that live around my studio, and thinking how we're actually acting in a more neighborly way than we did before. Everyone is wearing masks to be safe and keeping their distance and hopefully not grabbing all the toilet paper from the stores. And so we're all kind of acting with each other in mind. So I was inspired to make this print. We will get through this together. After all, we're neighbors. And at the bottom, it says, "Printed with love from your neighbor at 1123 Florence Avenue." That's the address of my studio. So I printed 250 copies of this poster and then walked the block around my studio and just handed it out to my neighbors. I also live not far from the studio, so I walked up and down 4 blocks and passed out these posters. I didn't see anybody. I didn't knock on any doors. I just put them in, behind screen doors and in mailboxes. And I left a note kind of introducing myself, kind of saying what I was doing. The last line of that note said, "At times like these, it's more apparent that we're all intrinsically connected, and this print is acknowledgement of that connection. Consider it a token of my regard, a faith in our perseverance, and a welcome to the neighborhood. Stay safe, and I'll see you outside." The cool thing was, a few days later, my neighbors started putting them up. So people started putting them up in their windows and in their doorways. We do have a few businesses around here, and they put them up too. And so it made me realize that we were all kind of feeling that same sense of isolation, that same sense of community arising more than before. And so I got to meet a lot more neighbors, and it's nice to walk around and know that we're all kind of connected in that way through this print and through this poster. As the violence continued on our television sets and people got more and more involved, I did a lot of Black Lives Matter posters and prints and shirts, but also wanted to do something that was just more straightforward, that said, stop killing Black people. So I went to the studio, started pulling type. It's funny, as I started setting the type, I wanted to be as big as bold as possible. The word killing would not fit on the page with my largest type, so I started swapping out smaller type to make it fit with the ing. And as designers know, you can't just do it once, it looks like a mistake. So I kind of integrated that into the rest of the design and ended up using larger type and smaller type to make these series of posters. Stop Killing Black People, Knees Off Our Neck, and Juneteenth 2020. So if you're unfamiliar, Juneteenth is the oldest celebration of kind of emancipation from slavery for Black people in the United States. The story is the Emancipation Proclamation was signed in 1863, but the message didn't travel across the whole country. And there were some enslaved Africans in Texas that did not know, that didn't get the message until the Army reached that area in Galveston. So they were still enslaved for 2.5 more years until June 19th, 1865, when they realized that they were free. And so that holiday is celebrated as Juneteenth. So it was a series of posters I did for Juneteenth, and Juneteenth 2020 just got more notoriety, so people around the country started to learn about this holiday as well. Businesses started to get off. We started to think of what could you be doing on Juneteenth. And because just looking at the TV and all the things that were happening with race in our country, it seemed as if a lot of people still hadn't got the message that Black people were free. So that's why the secondary message in all these posters are, we can no longer wait. Talking about race and racism and white supremacy and white privilege and white fragility, those conversations were happening a lot in the United States and around the country. And spurred by the Black Lives Matter movement, I wanted to do a piece that investigated the idea of white supremacy. A lot of times here we think of white supremacy as like the Ku Klux Klan and people burning crosses on people's lawn versus racism being something else. And like, what is the definition of racism, and can it be conscious or unconscious? So I want to talk about white supremacy as something that just seems more obvious what we're talking about, and how people are really kind of scared of that phrase. So I made a series of letterpress prints talking about white supremacy and how it shows up in the world and how people feel about it. So I did a series, so they're grouped in 3. So this series of 3 talks about how emotionally it could feel traumatic, devastating, exhausting. That could be something that people plan, that's actively working, calculated, intentional, nurtured. The idea that one race of people that doesn't really exist is better than another due to chemical in the skin is laughable, idiotic, and asinine. So there are 18 different posters following this same process, and then some newer language like trending and all the rage. So I did maybe 8 to 10 copies of each of these posters and had them exhibited on the front of the Minnesota Center for Book Arts in Minneapolis. This piece is called Eyes Wide Shut. So this is a view from across the street. So visually across the street, you see this kind of large message, but when you get close up, people can take in the individual messages, see if they agree with them, disagree with them. And that first poster with that just says white supremacy is also on there. And it's kind of a resting place for your eye, one, but also a place for the viewer to fill in the blank. We had planned to do this in the fall, and it got pushed back, so it ended up being put up maybe days after the insurrection at in our U.S. Capitol. So it seemed like a direct response to that. So that was kind of a cool timing where we're seeing the news that people are trying to break into the Capitol, and then like a day later, we're putting up these posters. So it felt like a really great fortuitous timing. And lastly, I just want to share that, you know, printers, as we can see in this, this event we're having, did a lot of things and leverage type and leverage their presses to do important things. I'm going to plug in my computer. It looks like it's, sorry, I'm going to shut off. Hold on 1 second, sorry. Sorry, my plug came out of the wall. You know, we had a big election in the United States in 2020. And so a bunch of printer friends of ours did this initiative to talk about voting and democracy in the United States and encourage people to vote through the ACPAA, the Amalgamated Colored Printers Association, which was started by two letterpress printers, Rick Griffith and Amos Paul Kennedy Jr. And so we invited a bunch of our printer friends to make posters to encourage people to vote. So we weren't doing it for candidates, we're doing it for the idea of our democracy and the idea of getting involved in this very important election that we were having. So we asked dozens of printers to make us posters, and they did, and we pulled them together, put them on a website, and people could order these posters. They were $11.03. 11/03, November 3rd is our election date, so the posters were inexpensive, but beautiful designed and printed posters from printers around the country. So you see, hey, PA, PA is Pennsylvania. That's a swing state in the United States. One talks about trees and the environment. So some of them were general posters. This beautiful second one is made up of broken type. So that's half of a broken O, half of a broken V, done by Stephanie Carpenter at the Hamilton Wood Type Museum. And the site's still up. Some of the posters are sold out, but we just got enough money to be able to ship posters to swing states that people could pass them out for free. The idea was just to kind of leverage the power of print to talk about voting and democracy and trying to, you know, do our part to encourage people. Thank you very much.